Karen called Judge Judy ignorant on live television. 30 seconds later, Judy revealed her 19 fake complaints and Karen was the one utterly destroyed. But what you're about to discover isn't just about those 19 complaints. Hidden in Judge Judy's files was evidence of something far worse. Something so shocking that it would expose Karen as the mastermind behind a multi-state fraud ring that had stolen over $400,000 from innocent businesses. This is the story of how one word, one moment of arrogance, brought down an entire empire of lies. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The courtroom was electric that Tuesday morning. The kind of charged atmosphere that only comes when something big is about to happen. The studio lights blazed down on Judge Judy's iconic bench, casting sharp shadows across the polished wood. In the gallery, audience members leaned forward, sensing drama in the air. At the plaintiff's table sat Karen Hendricks, 42, a woman who had perfected the art of righteous indignation. Her blonde hair was immaculately styled, her navy blue suit pressed to perfection, and her Hermes bag positioned just so on the table beside her. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight, never been told no, never faced a consequence she couldn't charm or sue her way out of. Judge Judy Sheindlin, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, surveyed her domain with the calm authority of someone who had seen every lie, every scheme, every manipulation in her 25 years on the bench. Her fingers drummed once against the wood, a subtle sign to those who knew her well that she was already 3 steps ahead of whatever game was about to be played. But even she couldn't have predicted what was about to unfold, or how one woman's arrogance would lead to the exposure of the most audacious fraud scheme her courtroom had ever seen. Case number 4721. Hendricks versus Pinewood Family Restaurant, the bailiff announced, his voice cutting through the tension. Karen rose from her seat with theatrical grace, smoothing her skirt and lifting her chin as if she were walking a red carpet rather than approaching a judge's bench. Behind her, restaurant owner Miguel Santos sat quietly, his weathered hands folded, his dark eyes reflecting a mixture of confusion and quiet desperation. He had run Pinewood for 15 years, serving his community with pride. And now this woman threatened to destroy everything he had built with accusations that made no sense. "Your Honor," Karen began, her voice honey-smooth with practiced victimhood, "I stand before you today as a victim of the most egregious discrimination I have ever experienced. Pinewood Restaurant didn't just refuse to serve me, they humiliated me, degraded me, and violated every principle of human decency." She paused for dramatic effect, her hand fluttering to her chest as if the memory itself caused physical pain. "I'm seeking $50,000 in compensation for the emotional trauma, the public embarrassment, and the violation of my basic civil rights." Judge Judy's eyebrows rose just a fraction, and those who knew her recognized the danger sign. Miguel Santos shifted in his seat, his mouth opening as if to speak, then closing again as his lawyer placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Ma'am," Miguel finally said, his accent thick with emotion and confusion, "I swear on my mother's grave we have never seen this woman before in our lives." That's when Judge Judy's eyes sharpened, and the real story began. Before we dive into what happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what Judge Judy is about to reveal will leave you speechless. This isn't just about fake complaints, this is about the most elaborate con game ever exposed on live television. And you won't believe how deep this rabbit hole goes. Trust me. You need to see this through to the end. Karen's transformation was instant and mesmerizing to watch. The composed businesswoman melted away, replaced by a trembling victim whose voice cracked with manufactured emotion. "Your Honor," she whispered, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue she had strategically placed in her palm, "what happened to me at Pinewood Restaurant on March 15th will haunt me for the rest of my life." She took a shuddering breath, her shoulders shaking just enough to sell the performance. "I walked into that establishment as a paying customer, as a human being deserving of basic respect, and I was treated like I was nothing. Like I was less than nothing." Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled, watching Karen's theatrical display with the detached interest of a scientist observing a particularly fascinating specimen. Behind the judge's impassive expression, wheels were already turning. 25 years of separating truth from fiction had given her an almost supernatural ability to detect deception, and every instinct she possessed was screaming that something was fundamentally wrong with this picture. "Tell me exactly what happened." "Mrs. Hendricks," Judge Judy said, her voice carrying that deceptively calm tone that regular viewers knew meant trouble. "Walk me through your experience, step by step." Karen straightened, composing herself with the practiced ease of someone who had told this story before. "I arrived at Pinewood at exactly 1:15 p.m. for lunch. I had been looking forward to trying their famous shepherd's pie after reading about it online. She reached into her designer bag and withdrew a manila folder thick with documents. I have photographs, receipts, even witness statements from other customers who saw how I was treated. Miguel Santos sat forward in his chair, his confusion deepening. Your Honor, with respect, we don't serve lunch on Tuesdays. We never have. Tuesday is prep day. We're closed to customers until 4 p.m. His voice carried the weight of a man watching his life's work being attacked with lies he couldn't understand. Karen's head snapped toward him, her eyes flashing with indignation. Are you calling me a liar? She demanded, her voice rising. Are you seriously going to sit there and claim I imagined being humiliated in front of a restaurant full of people? Judge Judy's pen tapped once against her desk. Mrs. Hendricks, let me see that evidence. The way she said evidence carried just enough skepticism to make Karen's jaw tighten. As Karen approached the bench with her folder, Judge Judy's eyes flicked to the timestamp on the first photograph. Her expression didn't change, but those who knew her well would have recognized the dangerous stillness that settled over her features. These are very interesting photographs, Judge Judy murmured, examining each image with the methodical precision of a forensic investigator. Crystal clear images of you looking distressed outside what appears to be Pinewood's entrance. She looked up, her gaze locking with Karen's. Tell me, Mrs. Hendricks, what camera did you use to take these? What does that matter? Karen's composure flickered for just a moment. The important thing is what happened to me. Humor me, Judge Judy replied, her tone growing cooler. Because these appear to have been taken with a professional camera. Very high quality. Almost like they were staged for maximum dramatic effect. The courtroom grew quieter, if that was even possible. Karen's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the podium. I have an expensive phone, Your Honor. I believe in documenting injustice when I see it. Judge Judy flipped through more documents, her silence stretching like a rubber band about to snap. Your witness statements are quite detailed, she observed. Very convenient that you had 3 people willing to provide written testimony about how poorly you were treated. She looked up again, pinning Karen with a stare that had made stronger people confess. Of course, it would be even more convenient if any of these witnesses actually existed. That's when Karen made her first real mistake. Instead of backing down, instead of showing even a hint of uncertainty, she doubled down with the arrogance that had carried her through dozens of previous scams. Your Honor, with all due respect, I find it troubling that you seem more interested in questioning my evidence than ensuring justice is served. Perhaps if you spent less time nitpicking and more time listening to victims, this system might actually work for people like me. The air in the courtroom went electric. Judge Judy's eyebrows rose, and veteran court watchers recognized the expression that meant someone had just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Miguel Santos's lawyer actually winced, knowing that questioning Judge Judy's competence was like throwing gasoline on a fire. But Judge Judy's voice remained calm, almost conversational. Mrs. Hendricks, are you suggesting that I don't know how to do my job? Karen lifted her chin, her confidence blinding her to the trap she was walking into. I'm suggesting that maybe it's time for the legal system to catch up with modern reality. Maybe it's time judges started believing victims instead of protecting businesses. She gestured dismissively toward Miguel. This man is clearly lying about his restaurant hours to avoid responsibility. I see, Judge Judy said softly, reaching for a thick file that had been sitting on the corner of her desk throughout the proceedings. Well then, Mrs. Hendricks, perhaps you can help me understand something. Because before we continue with your very detailed account of this traumatic experience, I have some questions about your extensive history as a victim of restaurant discrimination. Karen's face went pale, but she was too committed to the performance to stop now. I don't know what you mean, Your Honor. Judge Judy's smile was razor thin. Oh, I think you do. The thick manila file hit Judge Judy's desk with a sound that seemed to echo through the silent courtroom like a gunshot. Karen's eyes fixed on it with the fascination of a deer staring into headlights, her mouth slightly open as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Judge Judy's fingers drummed against the file's cover, a predator savoring the moment before the kill. Mrs. Hendricks, Judge Judy began, her voice carrying that deceptively calm tone that made seasoned attorneys nervous. I want you to think very carefully before you answer my next question. Have you ever filed a complaint against a restaurant before today? Karen's throat worked as she swallowed hard. Well, everyone has bad experiences sometimes, Your Honor, if that's what you mean. Bad experiences, Judge Judy repeated, flipping open the file with deliberate slowness. Is that what we're calling 19 separate complaints filed across 3 states in the past 2 years? The number hit the courtroom like a physical blow. Karen's face went from pale to chalk white, her hands gripping the podium so tightly her knuckles showed through her spray tan. That's taken completely out of context, Karen stammered, her polished composure cracking like ice under pressure. I'm a frequent diner. I notice when establishments don't meet standards. Judge Judy's laugh was sharp and humorless. Standards. Let me read you some of these standards, Mrs. Hendricks. She pulled out the first document. Olive Garden, Columbus, Ohio, May 2023. Claimed the waitress made racist remarks. Case dismissed when security footage showed no interaction occurred. She looked up, pinning Karen with her stare. The waitress you accused? She wasn't even working that day. Karen's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Miguel Santos leaned forward, recognition dawning in his eyes. Dios mío, he whispered. I remember her now. She came by 6 months ago, asking about our complaint procedure. Said she was writing a review blog. TGI Fridays, Cleveland, July 2023. Judge Judy continued relentlessly. Claimed to find a mouse in your salad. Demanded $30,000. Health Department investigation found your evidence was a toy mouse purchased from a nearby dollar store. The audience gasped, heads turning toward Karen, who seemed to shrink with each revelation. But Judge Judy wasn't finished. Red Lobster, Cincinnati, September 2023. Food poisoning claim. Medical records proved fraudulent when the doctor you named turned out to be a veterinarian who had been dead for 3 years. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, but Judge Judy's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Shall I continue, Mrs. Hendricks? Because I have 16 more, each more creative than the last. Karen's theatrical mask finally shattered completely. You don't understand, she shrieked, her voice rising to a pitch that made several audience members wince. These businesses take advantage of people like me. They think they can treat customers however they want and get away with it. People like you? Judge Judy repeated slowly, and Karen realized too late that she had just admitted to being a serial complainer. And what kind of people are those, Mrs. Hendricks? Karen's face twisted with fury and desperation. People who demand respect. People who won't be pushed around by minimum wage workers who think they're better than us. Her voice cracked with genuine emotion for the first time, but it wasn't victimhood. It was pure, entitled rage. Judge Judy leaned forward, her eyes glittering with dangerous satisfaction. Mrs. Hendricks, you just called me ignorant. But I think it's time someone showed you what ignorant really looks like. The trap was about to snap shut, and Karen was standing right in the middle of it. Judge Judy reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a second file, this one even thicker than the first, bound with a red ribbon that seemed to pulse with ominous promise. The courtroom fell into a silence so complete that the hum of the overhead lights became audible. Karen's eyes widened as she stared at the new evidence, her breath coming in short. Panicked gasps. Mrs. Hendricks, Judge Judy said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting ever could. Calling me ignorant was your biggest mistake, because ignorant people don't do their homework. She untied the ribbon with deliberate precision, each movement calculated to maximize Karen's terror. But I always do mine. The file fell open, revealing photographs, bank statements, and official documents that made Karen stumble backward, as if she'd been physically struck. What you don't know, Mrs. Hendricks, is that 3 months ago, the FBI contacted my office. They've been investigating a multi-state fraud ring targeting small businesses. Judge Judy's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Care to guess whose name kept appearing in their files? Karen's face went gray, all the blood draining from her features as the full scope of her situation became clear. I have no idea what you're talking about, she whispered, but her voice carried no conviction, only the hollow sound of someone watching their world collapse in real time. Really? Judge Judy flipped to a bank statement and held it up for the cameras. Because according to the FBI's financial investigation, you've collected over $400,000 in fraudulent settlements over the past 3 years. $400,000, Mrs. Hendricks. From honest business owners like Mr. Santos who were too scared to fight back against your threats. The courtroom exploded. Audience members gasped and pointed, their voices rising in a crescendo of outrage and disbelief. Miguel Santos's mouth fell open, his hands trembling as he processed the magnitude of what had almost happened to his restaurant. But Judge Judy wasn't finished with her demolition. The FBI has been tracking your pattern, she continued, her voice cutting through the chaos like a sword. Fake medical records, staged photographs, paid accomplices posing as witnesses. You've turned victimhood into a business model. She leaned forward, her eyes boring into Karen's soul. And the best part? Every single complaint you've filed, including this one against Mr. Santos, has been recorded, documented, and is now evidence in a federal case. Karen's legs gave out, and she had to grip the podium to keep from collapsing entirely. This is insane, she gasped, her voice barely audible. You can't prove any of this. You're just trying to intimidate me. Judge Judy's laugh was cold as winter steel. Intimidate you? Mrs. Hendricks, I don't need to intimidate you. She held up a final document, an official seal clearly visible at the top. Because as of this morning, you're already under federal indictment for wire fraud, mail fraud, and racketeering. The power had completely shifted, and Karen's empire of lies was crumbling to dust before America's eyes. The federal indictment hung in the air like a death sentence, and for a moment that stretched into eternity, Karen simply stared at the document in Judge Judy's hands. Then something inside her snapped, and the careful facade she had maintained for years shattered like glass hitting concrete. "No," she screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. "This is a setup. You're all in on this together." She spun around wildly, pointing at Miguel Santos, the cameras, even the audience. "You can't do this to me. I am a respected member of my community. I volunteer at the animal shelter. I donate to charity." Judge Judy watched the meltdown with the calm detachment of a meteorologist observing a hurricane. "Mrs. Hendricks, you're making this worse for yourself. I suggest you don't you dare tell me what to do," Karen shrieked, her perfectly styled hair now disheveled, her makeup running in black streaks down her cheeks. "You think you're so smart with your little files and your FBI friends, but you don't know who you're messing with." She fumbled in her purse, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. "I'm calling my lawyer. I'm calling the news. I'm going to expose this whole corrupt system." The bailiff took a step forward, his hand hovering near his radio, but Judge Judy held up a restraining finger. She wanted to let Karen dig her grave as deep as possible, and Karen was obliging with gusto. "You want to know the truth?" Karen continued, her voice rising to a shriek that made several audience members cover their ears. "Yes, I filed complaints. Yes, I demanded compensation, because these businesses deserve it. They're all the same. Rude, incompetent, thinking they can treat people like garbage because they wear aprons and serve food." Miguel Santos stood up slowly, his weathered face reflecting a mixture of pity and disgust. "Lady, I work 16 hours a day to feed families in my neighborhood. My mother started this restaurant with nothing. How dare you try to destroy that with your lies?" Karen whirled on him, her eyes wild with rage. "Shut up, just shut up. You people are all the same, playing the victim when someone finally holds you accountable." The words "you people" hung in the air, revealing the ugly prejudice that had always lurked beneath her polished exterior. Judge Judy's voice cut through Karen's ravings like a blade. "Mrs. Hendricks, you've just confessed to multiple felonies on live television. The FBI agents watching this broadcast are probably already on their way." Karen's phone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering to the floor. FBI agents. Watching. The reality finally penetrated her hysteria, and she looked around the courtroom with dawning horror, seeing the cameras that had been recording every word, every gesture, every damning admission. "That's right," Judge Judy said with satisfaction. "Smile, Mrs. Hendricks, you're about to become very famous for all the wrong reasons." The trap had sprung completely, and there was no escape. Before Judge Judy could even deliver her final verdict, two men in dark suits appeared at the courtroom doors. The FBI agents moved with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had done this countless times before, their presence sending a chill through the room that even the television lights couldn't warm. "Karen Hendricks," the lead agent called out, his voice carrying the weight of federal authority. "You need to come with us." Karen's legs buckled completely this time, and she collapsed into the plaintiff's chair, her face a mask of disbelief and terror. "This isn't real," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the courtroom's stunned silence. "This can't be happening." Judge Judy stood, her expression mixing satisfaction with genuine disgust. "Mrs. Hendricks, this case is dismissed with prejudice. Your counterclaim against Mr. Santos is frivolous and malicious. Furthermore, I'm recommending you be barred from filing any future complaints in small claims court." She paused, letting the words sink in. "As for your criminal charges, that's now out of my hands." The agents approached Karen with professional courtesy, but there was no gentleness in their movements. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," one began, and Karen's perfectly manicured world finally crumbled completely. Miguel Santos watched in stunned silence as his tormentor was led away in handcuffs, the woman who had nearly destroyed his family's legacy, reduced to a broken shell. The courtroom audience sat in shocked silence, many pulling out their phones to capture the historic moment when entitled fraud met unstoppable justice. Within minutes, clips of Karen's meltdown were spreading across social media platforms faster than wildfire. Karen vs. Judy began trending worldwide as millions watched the spectacular downfall of America's most audacious serial complainer. News outlets scrambled to cover the story. Legal experts weighed in on the unprecedented nature of the case, and restaurant owners across 3 states finally felt safe from the woman who had terrorized their industry. Karen's empire of lies hadn't just crumbled. It had been obliterated on live television, broadcast to millions of viewers who would never forget the day justice served its most satisfying meal. 3 months later, Karen Hendricks was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to her victims. The FBI's investigation revealed a network so sophisticated that it had operated like a criminal corporation, complete with fake documentation specialists and professional witness recruiters. Karen's downfall became a cautionary tale studied in law schools and business ethics courses across the country. But the real victory belonged to people like Miguel Santos, who saw his restaurant flourish as customers flocked to support the honest business owner, who had survived Karen's attempted destruction. The Pinewood family restaurant became a symbol of resilience, proving that truth and integrity could triumph over manipulation and greed. Judge Judy's handling of the case redefined what courtroom justice could look like in the modern era. Her methodical destruction of Karen's lies reminded America that accountability still existed for those brave enough to demand it. The case became the most watched episode in the show's history, viewed over 50 million times across all platforms. The lesson was crystal clear. In an age of fake reviews, manufactured outrage, and professional victimhood, the truth remains the most powerful weapon. Karen thought she could game the system forever, building her empire on the backs of honest business owners too scared to fight back. She forgot one crucial detail. Eventually, someone would do their homework. For every small business owner watching this story, remember that you don't have to be victims of professional complainers. Document everything, seek legal help when threatened, and never let fraudsters intimidate you into silence. The system works when good people refuse to be bullied. And for everyone else, remember what happened when Karen called Judge Judy ignorant. Sometimes the most arrogant people are the ones who know the least about who they're dealing with. Justice might be slow, but when it arrives, it's absolutely devastating. What did you think of Judge Judy's legendary takedown? Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Karen's shocking downfall. If this story of justice served cold gave you chills, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got more incredible courtroom moments where truth triumphs over lies. Remember, in a world full of Karens, be like Judge Judy. Always do your homework and never back down from the truth.